You make it, they take it, and they blow it on crab and lobster. According to a new report, the federal government went on a use it or lose it spending spree last year with a whopping $97 billion of our taxpayer money being used, spending nearly $5 million on lobster tail and crab, more than $1 million on standing desks, more than $600,000 on golf courses. The list goes just on and on and on. Federal agencies scramble to use what's left in their annual budget by September. That's the end of their fiscal year. Their goal, of course, is to ensure that Congress doesn't appropriate less money in the next year. Here now is Adam Andrzejewski. He's the founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, the watch group responsible for this report. Adam, there are very few things in this planet that make me as mad as government wasting my money, but it's getting worse, right?
Well, it is getting worse. We took a look at the last four fiscal year ends, the September of 2015, when the federal government, their blow-off spending was about $62 billion. Then in 2016, it went to $73 billion. In 2017, it went to $83 billion. And finally, last year, it went to $97 billion in the last month. And actually, more than half of it was in the last week. Incredibly, 1 out of every 10 contracts procured during the entire year was spent in the last week.
Wow.
$53 billion.
Adam, it's Jonas Ferris here. What's the deal? You know, all these lists have been going back for as long as I can remember, and they used to go back to the Pentagon and their $200 hammers. Like, why? What is the deal with the Defense Department and the just sheer waste? Is it across the board where it's all departments? But why don't you see this stuff about, like, the Social Security Department? What is it about defense where they get so ridiculous with, like, the foosball tables and stuff?
So I think, you know, at the Department of Defense, our data at OpenTheBooks.com shows that every single year on contracts, they spend about $250 billion. In the final month of the fiscal year, they spent $63 billion. So a huge portion of their spend was in that last month to spend down that budget so they at least get as much or more next year. Now, we found some troubling transactions. You know, $9,300 spent on a club leather chair. You've talked about the nearly $5 million worth of lobster tail and snow crabs spent in the last month. We looked at the year. It was $22 million spent by the Pentagon on lobster tail alone. Over the course of the past 4 years on lobster tail alone, it was nearly $55 million.
And that's not going to the troops.
Yeah, I think this is an example of cost-plus accounting gone wild. So with regards to defense spending, I look back in history, only one time in 1980, the Oliver Hazard Perry Frigate, they came in $50,000 under budget. So it has been done in terms of defense spending and coming in under budget. How do you think we fix this going forward?
So we can fix it through some reforms, obviously. I think the major reform rests with the Congress. They need to get back to regular order, where you have public transparency on every line item of that budget with public votes, public debate, committees and subcommittee hearings. That will fix this faster than anything else.
Adam, this is Adam Lashinsky with Fortune. I like having other Adams on the show. Welcome. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I have two questions to help me understand what it is that you're doing. Number one, how do you know that an expenditure that happens in the last week or month or whatever, however you define it, how do you know that's a blow-off expenditure? And secondly, how does this government behavior compare with corporate sector behavior, say at Fortune 500 companies with large budgets who also have money to spend at the end of the fiscal period?
So those are great questions. I think we'd feel a lot better about the use it or lose it spending, specifically at the Pentagon, if they could simply pass their audit. As you know, Adam, for the past couple of decades, they were required by law for an audit. The president did force the audit. 1,200 auditors. They spent $400 million on their audit of the Pentagon, and they flunked.
And any idea on how to compare it to the corporate world?
Oh, so the corporate world uses zero-based budgeting. So they start at the ground up. Every expense has to be justified, and in the end, every expense is audited. That's what we advocate for the federal government as well.
Adam, this is Gary Smith. Going back to Adam Lashinsky's remarks, of course, he would not be that skeptical. He eats lobster every night. So for him, that's just a normal meal, a normal expenditure. People eating lobster at the end of the year, he's like, hey, whatever, I eat that all the time. But here's my question.
It's every other day, Gary.
Look, if I am in one of those departments, defense, Treasury, State, I'm just going to do what my boss says, and my boss is eventually the cabinet secretary. No one out there is going to say, hey, let's tighten up, because they know that eventually they keep doing that. People are going to say, hey, why do we need such a big State Department, or why do we need such a big Department of Commerce? So I understand your point about there needs to be congressional oversight, but don't we have just the same problems there? Congress, particularly, well, it doesn't matter left or right, keeps approving these bloated budgets that we can't match in revenue. So don't we need something more along the lines of some balanced budget amendment to kind of clamp down on this spending?
Well, we have urged the president in open letters published at the Wall Street Journal and our petition signed by 103,000 regular Americans. As commander-in-chief, the president should wage war on waste. Specifically, we've outlined 100 outrageous examples of taxpayer abuse. One of those was at the Pentagon. They were actually paying $1,200 per coffee cup. And when Senator Grassley wrote them an oversight letter from Senate Judiciary Committee, the Pentagon admitted to spending $350,000 on those expensive coffee cups. So the president, he needs to get engaged on spending. He's tipped us to his messaging for the re-election campaign in 2020. He's going to run it against socialism and Democrats draining the Treasury from the left. Republicans need credibility on spending. They cannot be seen as draining the Treasury from the right.
Adam, one thing I got to make absolutely clear: when the lobster and the lobster tails and the crab, it's not going to the troops. These are going to Pentagon officials, to the bureaucrats, to the fat cats, contractors, etc. That's what's really obscene, is that when the troops need things like protective armor and stuff, instead it's going to $1,000 coffee cups. It's just awful. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Please come back and see us again, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David, for your interest in our work.
Great stuff.